Hi, everybody. Well, as the slide says, my name is Nia. I'm from Israel, and my formal title is CEO of a consulting company called Greenfield Technologies. I'm going to talk about fraud analytics, call analytics and fraud analysis. However, because the title allows me, this is what I would rather be talking about. And this is what normally happens when you have a PBX. It doesn't really matter if it's an asterisk or a free switch or, God forbid, a VIA or whatever. You can always get hit by somebody calling in and making sure that you pay a lot of money to the phone company. The Humbug project, by the way, the name, if nobody knows, Humbug comes from the term bah humbug in English. You can look it up on Wikipedia and what it means. The idea is to be able to filter out a lot of the noise that's being created on telephony platforms and just picking out that fraud incident really, really fast. So what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about telephony fraud? Did any of you ever imagine this as being the global market for fraud losses for telephony? We're talking about $80 billion every year. And that number grows every year, more or less by 3%. How many of you got hit last year for telephony fraud? Or the year before? How much did you lose? Sorry? $200. You're lucky. Because I'm going to show you 3 different cases that happened over the past year in Israel that summed up to almost $500,000. Just from PBXs that were installed poorly. So if we're talking about the fraud market, this is more or less what it looks like. This is the pie chart. The inescapable CFA pie chart that shows exactly how much money we lose every year for fraud. And now this is mainly based on carriers. Now carriers say this is what they lose. Now when they say lose, they don't mean that they don't get paid. Sure, they get paid. They just don't get paid the whole amount. So what will the carrier usually do if a customer gets hit? Says, well, you have to pay me at least what I paid somebody else. So the global market is not actually 80 billion, it's 160 billion. Twice as much. So what the Humbug project is trying to tackle is this area, which is PBX and voicemail fraud, which is $15.1 billion every year. And we're talking about, of course, premium rate services, arbitrage, and so on. The list goes up to about 60 billion a year. A few case studies in Israel. During Yom Kippur of 2009, a religious NPO in Israel got hit. And I mean seriously hit. Now, if you're Jewish, you know that Yom Kippur is a day of penance. That means we don't work, we don't eat, we don't drink, and we do not talk on the phone. Well, especially if you're an Orthodox Jew, or there are some extremist points. So, other than emergencies, there is no case for a religious NPO to go about and talk on the phone on Yom Kippur. Makes perfect sense. So, what happened was that this specific NPO, got hit by a malicious user. Okay, now think about it this way. He had 26 hours to abuse that system. 26 hours. How much money can you defraud a PBX system in 26 hours? One system only that had half a PRI circuit, 14 DS zeros. That is $24,000, people. Just one example. During that same Yom Kippur, that same holiday, the same 26 hours, I talked with some of the operators in Israel and trying to get a hold of exactly what happened. And apparently the global loss over those 26 hours was this. Over $200,000 were stolen during 26 hours. All from poorly configured PBX systems, be it Asterisk, Avaya, Panasonic, it didn't really matter because all suffered from the same problem. I do admit that most of the systems were Asterisk based, but we can't do much about integrators that have no idea what they're doing. If you're putting outbound context in your voicemail configuration, then yeah, you will get hit. I can assure you. Here's something a bit more recent, April 2010. Northern Israeli IP-centrics provider got hit. He built a platform built on VMware and a combination of elastics to provide hosted PBX systems to customers. Poorly configured, again, voicemail. Voicemail appears over and over and over and over again. This is like the pitfall of all PBX systems. During a period of almost 3 weeks, 25 different systems got hijacked over that specific hosted PBX cloud, running about $55,000 worth of losses. So we did see a few things that come over and over, and this example is just a month ago. A call center that actually called me up at 2 a.m. in the morning saying, we got a phone call from the local PTT saying that our system is sending out calls to Mali. And I go, do you work in Mali? And he goes, I have no idea where Mali is. I said, well, I think it's somewhere in Africa, but whatever. And essentially what happened was that the integrator left the old dreaded PHP config editor. You familiar with that tool that everybody really likes? Edit your Asterisk configuration files directly from FreePBX. Admittedly, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. That's like saying, okay, hack me, hack me, hack me. Just one, we eventually found there was a bug in FreePBX that caused an escalation path that enables the user to go about and just put whatever he wants in there. Again, an integrated provider backdoor caused this. The guy got in, defined a user, new context, no CDRs, and there is no trace of what the guy did. So the PTT says one thing, the customer says, I have no record of it, and I have something that records all my calls. So you're lying. And again, these guys got hit for $22,000 in less than 6 hours. Less than 6 hours to create 22,000. They had 3 E1 PRI circuits. That's 90 phone calls concurrently. Amazing. So in general, while the carriers that were involved in all these frauds were able to detect the fraud, they were only able to go about and alert the customer saying only 24 or 48 hours afterwards. It is very rare for a carrier to go about and be able to tell you in real time you are currently being attacked. And there's a reason for that. Have you ever seen how much traffic a carrier handles? It's virtually impossible to know if something is wrong. You have to make it look like it sticks out like a sore thumb, but it doesn't inside a carrier. And once we started analyzing these fraud attacks, we realized a few key factors. All attacks always occurred in a defined time frame. Whether it's the same attack happening on different systems or different attacks on the same system, they always had a specific time frame. For example, call to Mali went in specific times. Calls, for example, to Turkey went specifically on one time. So it was very much targeted. The attack originated calls to similar destinations. In these specific cases, most of them was Swiss Mobile and Belgium Mobile, and the call center it was Mali. Attacks were done in very short bursts of traffic, every time to test exactly which destinations are open, like snooping around, seeing what's going on. Then a large amount of traffic being blasted into the PBX in a very short time, sometimes even racking up to 120 calls concurrently. These guys know what they do. We were able to to detect that the 3 specific attacks were originated from China. One from China, one from the Palestinian Authority, and one from Turkey. And I know that you'll say, okay, Israel. Sure, you're going to get something from the Palestinian Authority. Makes perfect sense. But coming in from China and other places, I do not believe that fraud is political. This is purely cash. It's really easy to make cash calling to Cuba at 76 cents a minute. Right? It's a lot of money. Okay, so when we started dealing with this, by the way, Humbug started initially as a call analytics suite. We initially had a problem with the normal asterisk CDR system, the way we analyze CDRs. It was just too slow. And initially we started working on a way to do it faster, and we then realized that what we're actually doing is trying to get that specific point of the fraud, of understanding where fraud is actually located on our system. So when we look at the future and what we want for people to have is something more in these terms. PBX owners will be alerted of fraud attacks as they are happening, or let's say in a very short time frame. So for example, if there's a fraud attack on your system, we want to be able to alert you in 15 to 30 minutes, not 4 hours or 6 hours or 26 hours, God forbid. We don't want the PBX owner to be at the mercy of their carriers. We always try to rely on our carriers to protect us. They won't protect you. Why should they? You will pay them anyway. Why would they want to protect you? They're going to get their money one way or another. We see PBX owners around the world as its own network of information. Carriers share information from one another. They have a very good view of when a carrier gets attacked or gets defrauded. They go about and they share that information. But as the customers, we don't have that visibility. That specific information is not available to us. Just to give you an idea, membership in the CFCA costs about $2,000 a year. Do you know any PBX owner that will pay that? I don't think so. PBX owners will not be required to pay an arm and a leg in order to have a proper monitoring system for the PBX system. Sure, ASIPS provides a way to go about and look at your CDRs, but it's not enough. CDRs are the end result. They are not the process. The process is a lot more complicated. And I do see a point in time where open source analytical suites replace platforms like Cividia and ECTEL. Now the default or the de facto standard today for carrier standard fraud analysis is Cividia and ECTEL. These are the two biggest platforms, and they are, again, limited. Sometimes, because I'm in constant contact with some of the fraud managers in different telcos, they tell me, look, these platforms work, but they do require a lot of human interaction with the actual platform, because we take a lot of reports from them and go into the Excel again and start analyzing it manually. So what's the use of that platform if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do? It just gives you a very rough idea, and their ability to detect, as far as I know, is not all that accurate. It just gives you a good idea of what's happening, but it's not accurate. So, according to our idea, in the future, people or PBX owners will use the Humbug project. The purpose of the Humbug is, we have two specific purposes. A, to give back control to the PBX owner. Control not over the PBX itself, but control over the expenses and the various costs that are associated with handling their PBX systems. We initially started working on the project in 2009. We are currently privately funded. We had raised a nice amount of funds in order to facilitate the initial development. Our objective is to go about and provide a collaborative, open source, PBS agnostic expense assurance and call analytics platform. When we say expense assurance, that's basically fraud analysis. The SaaS, we have two different versions. One is a SaaS, software as a service, where you can hook up your PBX to it and just try it out and see how it works. And there will be an open source derivative of that service that will be launched on the 14th of November. That means next month, actually in 2 weeks from now, more or less. The community edition will include the call analytics suite. The fraud analysis, unfortunately, is